It's almost hard to believe, isn't it?
Hmm.
Well, while the country was tearing itself apart during the Civil War, this time of just profound division,
Yeah.
they were still focused on creating these huge unifying murals right there in the U.S. Capitol.
Celebrating westward expansion, yeah. It's quite the paradox.
Let's really unpack this today on the deep dive. We're going to explore the history, the context, and the really rich symbolism in Emmanuel Lutzy's Westward the Course of Empire Takes Its Way.
And Constantino Brumidi's Apotheosis of Washington.
Exactly.
What's so fascinating, I think, is that these weren't just, pretty pictures. They were making powerful statements visually, right when the nation felt incredibly fragile.
Absolutely. And to help us sort of navigate these artistic narratives, we'll be drawing on insights from America's Manifest Destiny, The American Experience in the Classroom,
Okay.
and also the Wikipedia page for President James K. Polk.
Got it.
So our goal for you, the learner, is to really get a handle on this 19th century idea, manifest destiny, how it showed up in the art right in the seat of American power, and the crucial role President Polk played in actually driving that westward movement.
We're looking beyond just describing the paintings.
Yes. Trying to uncover the deeper meanings, the historical forces,
Yeah.
So let's start right there. What was Manifest Destiny exactly?
Okay. So at its heart, Manifest Destiny was this widely held belief in the 19th century
A belief that.
that the United States was basically destined, some even said divinely ordained, to expand across the entire North American continent.
Wow. Divinely ordained.
Yeah, it wasn't just about grabbing land. It was deeply tied up with a sense of national purpose, even like a moral duty for some.
That sounds like it has deep roots then, not just something that popped up in the 1800s.
Oh, definitely. You can trace elements back to the 17th century, easily, to
Yeah.
the early Puritan settlers.
Okay.
And their strong belief in American exceptionalism.
Yeah.
John Winthrop's whole city upon a hill idea.
Right, a model for the world.
Exactly. That a feeling of being special, chosen, it kind of persisted. And then you layer on things like the biblical call to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it.
Ah, okay. You can see how expansion might get a sort of religious justification in some minds.
Precisely. That underpinning was there.
So fast forward a couple hundred years, and this idea starts to solidify more formally.
It does. While the feeling was around for a while, the actual phrase, manifest destiny, well, that's usually credited to a journalist, John Louis Assault,
When was this?
around 1845. He used it specifically as justification for annexing Texas and pushing into the Oregon Territory.
So it became a useful, kind of catchy term?
Very potent. It neatly packaged this widespread feeling that American expansion wasn't just going to happen, but that it should happen, that it was morally right.
And let's be clear, this expansion wasn't exactly peaceful, was it?
No, not at all. Manifest destiny was used to rationalize some incredibly harsh actions. I mean, most significantly, the forced removal of Native American peoples.
How did they justify that?
Well, the common argument was that these lands weren't being, quote, properly used by indigenous people, and that it was America's duty to bring civilization, make the resources productive. It's, frankly, a deeply troubling aspect of the whole ideology. It basically dehumanized and justified dispossessing entire cultures.
And that idea of American exceptionalism you mentioned earlier, that really fed into Manifest Destiny, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That core belief that the U.S. was unique, superior, a beacon of liberty and democracy, it reinforced the idea that expansion wasn't just for America's gain.
But for the world's benefit.
Kind of, yeah. The thinking was that America had this special role, and spreading across the continent was part of fulfilling that destiny.
Okay, so that gives us a good grounding in the ideology. Let's switch to the art. Lutzy's Westward, the Course of Empire Takes Its Way. It still just amazes me this was happening during the Civil War.
It really is remarkable. Emmanuel Lutzy, he was actually German-born, but became an American artist. He started this mural study in 1861.
Right when the war was started.
Exactly. Think about that. A nation splitting apart, and yet putting resources into projecting this image of unified, forward-moving, westward progress.
So what's the main scene he depicts? What are we looking at?
Lutzy himself described it. It's like a group of immigrants reaching the top of a hill, looking out at the vast, promising West.
Like a promised land.
Right. And behind them is the Valley of Darkness, the tough journey they left behind. It's this big, dynamic crowd showing the whole story of migration, births, deaths, even fights,
Wow.
as European Americans moved west. And he even put a central family, looking at the sunset, which he specifically said was like the Holy Family.
Giving it that sacred feel again.
Exactly, imbuing the whole journey with this kind of higher purpose.
Who are the main figures kind of leading the charge in the painting?
Well, you see these determined-looking frontiersmen clearing the path, and then along the bottom margin, Lutze put these small, round portraits.
Oh, yeah.
William Clark on the left, Daniel Boone on the right.
Iconic explorers.
Totally. Boone, famous for Kentucky.
Yeah.
Clark, obviously from Lewis and Clark, exploring the Louisiana Purchase. By putting them there, flanking a view of San Francisco Bay, he's visually linking those early explorations to reaching the Pacific.
Makes sense. Now, the sources also talk about a lot of symbols packed into the borders, like Jason and the Argonauts. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a reference to the Greek myth, right? Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece.
Okay.
So the image of the Argo ship returning with the fleece, it symbolizes this long, hard journey that fulfills a prophecy. It probably resonated with the idea of a sort of divinely guided quest for the Golden Fleece of the West, its resources, its potential.
Mirroring the nation's destiny.
Pretty much.
And the three magi, another biblical link.
Yep, straight from the Nativity story. Travelers from the East, guided by a star to a significant birth, again, reinforcing that theme of a guided journey to somewhere important. Echoes of manifest destiny.
Christopher Columbus is in there, too.
He is, shown in profile, holding a globe and calipers, tools of exploration.
So representing the start of it all, the European discovery.
Kind of laying the groundwork for everything that followed.
And the dove with the olive branch. That one seems straightforward.
It is. Noah's flood, right? The end of the flood, the promise of new land, symbolizing the promise of a fresh start, fertile ground in the West.
Okay. And then, very prominently, the American eagle.
Right at the top center. Big wings spread wide. And below it, banners with the painting's title. Westward, the course of empire takes its way.
Which is a quote.
Yes, from a poem by Bishop George Berkeley, an Irish philosopher who actually predicted America would be the next great center of civilization.
Wow.
So the eagle isn't just, the national bird. It's heralding this predicted American greatness, tied directly to moving west. And look closely, flanking the eagle.
What's there?
You see Native Americans sort of receding or looking away. Alongside figures like a hunter and an axeman, the forces driving that westward movement. It subtly acknowledges the impact.
So putting it all together, the main message seems to be progress, triumph, divinely sanctioned.
That's definitely the core feeling Lutz is going for, a sense of national unity coast to coast, elevating the whole westward movement to something almost mythical.
Mixing hardship and success.
Right. Presenting these pioneers as, like, legendary heroes for the future. Glorious examples, he hoped.
But the reality for many people on those trails was, well, a lot grimmer, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Lutz includes some difficulties. You see a burial, a wounded man,
Huh.
but overall, it's romanticized hugely.
Yeah.
The source material gives an account from a Mrs. J.B. Rideout. She talks about finally reaching the promised land after this brutal overland journey
Yeah.
and finding just this small, disappointing settlement. Not exactly glorious, the journey itself. So dangerous. Skirmishes, disease everywhere, cholera, typhoid were rampant, and the weather, getting caught by winter in the mountains.
Not the triumphant March Lutze show.
Far from it. For many, it was just about survival, enduring incredible suffering.
It's interesting, though, that Lutz actually went out west himself to sketch things.
He did. He traveled to the Rocky Mountains, around Pikes Peak. He wanted to capture the look, the feel of the Western landscape accurately.
For realism.
Yeah, to convey the grandeur of reaching the Pacific Slope, even if his portrayal of the human side was, let's say, selective. He felt his time in Colorado gave him what he needed.
Okay, let's pivot now to the other big mural, Brumidi's Study for the Apotheosis of Washington. Also done during the Civil War, also meant as a symbol of Union strength. First off, what does apotheosis even mean?
Apotheosis basically means elevating a human to divine status, making them godlike.
Ah, and that's what Brumidi does with George Washington here.
Precisely. That's the central theme.
So describe the center. Who do we see up there?
Right in the middle, you have George Washington, very presidential in his military uniform, and he's flanked by two allegorical figures.
Okay.
On his right is Liberty. She's wearing a blue toga and that red Phrygian cap, the old Roman symbol of freedom, and she's holding a fasces, another Roman symbol, this one for power and authority.
And on his left?
That's Victoria's fame. She's got a trumpet, like she's announcing victory, and a palm branch, which means peace and triumph.
And above them, there are those female figures in an arc.
Yes, 13 of them.
Yeah.
They represent the 13 original colony.
Right.
And together they're holding a banner that says, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, the U.S. motto, all about unity.
Okay. And down below Washington, there's someone fighting.
That's freedom again, depicted as a woman with a sword and a shield with the stars and stripes, and she's standing over defeated enemies. It's even said that Brumidi subtly put a likeness of Jefferson Davis, the Confederate president, among the vanquished down there. Even more obvious in the final mural, apparently.
Wow, okay. Direct political commentary during the war.
Definitely.
The study also includes Benjamin Franklin.
Yes, he's shown being guided by Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom, and he's next to other key American inventors, Robert Fulton of steamboat fame, and Samuel F.B. Morse, the telegraph guy. Minerva's got her arm out towards them, like she's bestowing knowledge. It symbolizes American innovation, ingenuity.
And then around the edges, there are other groups of figures. What do they represent? Sort of clockwise.
Okay, going around, you've got Neptune, god of the sea, with an ironclad warship nearby. That's American naval power.
Makes sense.
Then there's Venus, rising from the sea, holding the first transatlantic cable, symbolizing communication, tech progress.
Right.
Then Mercury, god of commerce, with his caduceus staff and a bag of money, handing it toward Robert Morris.
The financier of the revolution.
Exactly, representing commerce and finance. Then comes Vulcan, god of the forge, with parts of a cannon and a steam engine. Industry, military might.
Okay.
And finally, you have Ceres, goddess of the harvest, sitting on a McCormick Reaper, that huge agricultural invention.
Innovation again.
Right. And with her is America, also wearing a liberty cap, holding the reins, and Flora, goddess of flowers. So that whole group represents agriculture, innovation, the bounty of the land.
So the big picture interpretation is Washington elevated to almost a god, and America portrayed as this powerful, destined for greatness nation, like a new Rome.
That's pretty much it. Elevating Washington solidifies him as the American hero. And all the surrounding scenes showcase American achievements, science, industry, commerce, military power.
A powerful message during the Civil War.
Extremely. It's saying, even in this dark time, look at our foundational greatness. It's a message of hope, suggesting future unity and continued success, a real boost for Union morale.
And the final mural itself, up in the Capitol Dome, that must have been a massive job.
Oh, huge. Unprecedented in American art at the time. Brumidi knew about apotheosis from Europe, sure, but painting on that enormous curved ceiling 180 feet up.
The perspective alone.
Exactly. Huge technical challenges. Getting the figures to look right from way down below.
Yeah.
He initially asked for $50,000, which was a fortune then, but settled for $40,000 just to get started.
Wow.
The final fresco is over 4,600 square feet. And incredibly, once he got past the red tape, he finished it in just 11 months.
During the war.
Which tells you how important it was seen to be symbolically.
Okay, let's bring President James K. Polk into the picture now. The sources really paint him as a major force behind Manifest Destiny.
Absolutely. Polk, the 11th president, right, served from 1845 to 1849. He was a very strong believer in westward expansion. It defined his presidency, really.
And what were his big achievements on that front? Territorial expansion.
His term was packed with it. He oversaw the annexation of Texas.
Which was already its own republic, briefly.
Right. Then he acquired the massive Oregon Territory through negotiations with Britain.
Okay.
And, of course, the huge Mexican cession, California, New Mexico, and more after the Mexican-American War.
It sounds like he didn't just accept Manifest Destiny, he actively pursued it.
Oh, he was deeply convinced. He saw it as America's destiny to stretch clear across the continent. His actions, especially leading the country into the war with Mexico, were directly aimed at making that happen.
He really believed it was America's right, its duty.
Yeah. And you have to think about the mix of motivations, right? Economic opportunity, national pride, that whole American exceptionalism thing we talked about. It all fueled his drive.
What about the Oregon Treaty with Britain? How did that play out?
Well, Polk came in talking tough. Remember the slogan, 54-40 or a fight?
Yeah, claiming way up into modern-day Canada.
Right, but he also didn't really want a war with Britain. So eventually, through diplomacy, they compromised on the 49th parallel as the border.
Which still gave the U.S. a huge chunk of territory.
Very substantial piece, yeah, and avoided another conflict.
But then came the Mexican-American War. That did happen, and it led to enormous expansion.
It was a pivotal and pretty controversial conflict. Polk definitely wanted California and New Mexico. Mexico refused to sell.
So tensions rose.
Escalated quickly. Polk sent troops down to the disputed border area near the Rio Grande. Fighting broke out. War was declared in 1846.
And the result for the U.S.?
A decisive military victory.
Yeah.
And then the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. That's where the U.S. gained the Mexican cession.
Which includes?
Present-day California, Nevada, Utah, most of Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Just vast.
That pretty much sealed the deal on Manifest Destiny reaching the Pacific.
It was a massive step towards fulfilling that vision, absolutely. Coast to coast.
But Polk's actions weren't universally cheered at the time, were they?
No, definitely not. He got a lot of criticism for starting the war. Many saw it as an unjust war of aggression, just a land grab.
And the slavery issue.
That exploded. Bringing in all this new territory immediately raised the question, would these new states be free or slave? It poured gasoline on the already smoldering fire of sectional tensions. Huge long-term consequences.
What were Polk's own views on slavery in those new lands? Do he weigh in?
Well, Polk himself was a slave owner. He actually bought more enslaved people while he was president.
Really?
Yeah. He firmly believed in the rights of Southerners to take their enslaved people into the territories, while he publicly kind of discouraged extreme agitation on the issue from either side.
His actions and beliefs leaned south.
Clearly aligned with protecting and potentially expanding slavery's reach.
Okay. Lastly, let's circle back to George Washington. Why is he the one chosen for that grand apotheosis in the Capitol Dome, especially during the Civil War?
Well, by the mid-1800s, Washington had become this almost mythical figure. He was someone both North and South could, generally speaking, revere. A unifying symbol.
Why him specifically?
People admired his character, his virtue, his supposed lack of ambition for power, especially the fact that he voluntarily gave up power after the war, like the Roman hero Cincinnatus.
Right, the ideal citizen leader.
Exactly. Even John Adams said he basically embodied the American character. So during a time of intense division, he represented these enduring national values everyone could ideally agree on.
I read there was even a plan way back to bury him in the Capitol.
Yeah, that was an early idea. Congress proposed burying his remains right under the dome. It didn't happen. He's at Mount Vernon, of course.
Yeah.
But it shows that desire to make him physically central to the nation's identity, embodied in the Capitol building.
Even before the mural.
Right. And remember Horatio Greeno's statue of Washington in a toga? Controversial, maybe, but another attempt to create this monumental figure of him there.
So, by the Civil War, Washington's image was practically Sakener.
It really was. In the decades after he died, he just got increasingly idealized. His name became shorthand for America, for liberty, for moral character. There's that quote from a European traveler saying, basically every American felt they had to have a picture of Washington in their house. Another observer, Gustave de Beaumont, even called him a god in America.
So Bermudi's apotheosis is like the ultimate expression of that feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Making him literally godlike, venerating him as the ideal American. It was this incredibly powerful symbol of unity and hope, right when the nation needed it most, during the war's darkest days.
It's interesting, too, that Mount Vernon itself was often treated as neutral ground during the war.
That just shows the immense respect he commanded from both sides, even then. The mural was like a visual prayer for reunification, a reminder of shared origins and potential future greatness.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. We've looked at Manifest Destiny as an ideology.
Right, this powerful belief in expansion.
We've seen how it was visualized in these ambitious, sometimes idealized Capitol murals.
Lutz's westward push, Bermudi's apotheosis.
We've discussed James K. Polk's crucial and sometimes controversial role in making that expansion happen.
Annexing Texas, Oregon, the Mexican cession.
All playing out against the backdrop of the Civil War, with George Washington held up as this enduring symbol of unity.
And when you connect it all, you see how these 19th century ideas and artworks weren't just abstract. They had real, profound, lasting effects.
Shaping the map.
Shaping the map, absolutely. And deeply impacting lives. The pioneers seeking opportunity, yes, but also, crucially, the indigenous people who were displaced and worse.
And creating these murals during the Civil War.
It really underscores how art can be used to shape national identity, national aspirations, even when especially when the nation is in crisis.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. How do these 19th century beliefs about America's destiny and these very visible, very potent artistic representations, how do they still shape how we understand American identity today?
And the nation's role in the world. Thinking about the complex legacy of westward expansion, the opportunities it created for some, alongside the immense costs borne by others.
Yeah. It's a story with deep roots and lasting echoes, definitely worth continuing to examine.